The 2023 NBA Play-In Tournament is here, and in this video, I'm going to be giving you my predictions for every single series to see who will be the 7th and 8th seed in both conferences. Let's get into it. Real quick before I get on with this video, if you end up enjoying it, then please be sure to subscribe. Also drop a like on this video. It'll only take 1 second and makes a massive difference in how the video performs in the YouTube algorithm. Also, I want to mention that there is going to be a live podcast pretty much like an hour or so after this one comes out, where me and my podcast co-host talk more in depth about the play-in. I'm going to do some quick fire talks about each of these series just because I got to cover a lot of them. But if you want to see some more in-depth, maybe you feel a certain way about what I said about your team in here, and I'll elaborate on that further in that podcast. So go check it out. It will be the top link in the description and pinned comment. Obviously, the background's different. I'll just acknowledge that now. It's going to be like that for the next 2 weeks on both channels. Sorry about that, but it is what it is. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the first series in the Eastern Conference. That series being the Atlanta Hawks versus the Miami Heat. The regular season record between these two is Miami beating them 3-1. What's really interesting about this matchup in particular is that if you look at the stats between these two teams, they are basically in perfect contrast. While the Atlanta Hawks are 9th in offense, the Heat are 25th. While the Hawks are 21st in defense, they are 7th. And the Hawks 4th at not turning it over. The Heat 4th at creating turnovers. So very interesting contrast, but for this series, I'm definitely going to be going with the Miami Heat, just based on experience pretty much alone. Now, of course, we have seen the Atlanta Hawks make the conference finals under Trae Young, but with the Heat, there's more experience there, and I do like their side of this matchup significantly more. Especially when you take into consideration the effect that Miami's defense has had on Atlanta's two main players, them being, of course, Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. If you take a look, Trae and DeJounte both struggle with efficiency and production against the Miami Heat. By contrast, if you take a look at Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo versus Atlanta, they really have no issue scoring quite well and frankly better than they typically do. So, gonna go with Miami in this one. This is the play-in tournament, so I can say for all of these series, it could go the other way, because even if you have the worst team in the league and the best team in the league, it is very well possible for the worst team to just win one game, because it is one game. That's why the play-in tournament is exciting by nature. Next round for the East, we're going to talk about Bulls versus Raptors. Now, if this Bulls team was the same as it was for a majority of the season, I would pick the Raptors to win this one. If you take a look at their regular season matchups, the Bulls lose the season series 2-1, but if you also take a look at the date of those games, the new look post-trade deadline Bulls, post-All-Star break Bulls, that have just been insanely different from what they were earlier on in the season, a team that would be on a 50-win pace, I think that team is better than Toronto. Now, I do have concerns over the fact that both LaVine and DeMar DeRozan struggled pretty significantly, especially DeMar against the Toronto Raptors, but ultimately, I do believe that they have the favorable matchup. Nikola Vucevic also plays really well, although his turnovers per game are like super high, so there is that. Fred VanVleet is also pretty good versus the Raptors, and in general, the Raptors don't really struggle against the Bulls, but again, that's taking a look at games that were pre the new look Bulls, so I'm going to go with the new look Bulls here over the Toronto Raptors. Moving over to the Western Conference, we have the Timberwolves versus the Lakers, and I can make this one real easy. Even if everyone was healthy, I would go with the Lakers in this matchup. However, for the Minnesota Timberwolves, they are missing Rudy Gobert due to him punching his teammate. They are missing Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, and both Karl Anthony Towns and Jalen Noel are a game time decision and questionable. I think they'll probably play because the stakes are pretty significant here, obviously, and still you have to deal with Cat and Edwards, but J-Mac not being there defensively to bother LeBron, AD has done well against them historically and recently. The Lakers probably have this one. It's possible it goes the other way, like I said, but they probably got it. The next matchup in the Western Conference is the OKC Thunder versus the New Orleans Pelicans. Obviously, of course, there's going to be no Zion Williamson as well as no Jose Alvarado for the Pelicans. If we're taking a look at offensive and defensive rating, it would make sense to be a little bit more in favor of the Pelicans, not to mention the fact that they have won the regular season series 3-1. With this matchup is probably the one that I could see going either way to the furthest degree. Like, really, it does feel like a coin toss to me. Obviously, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the best player in the series, but the Pelicans have more experienced and just more depth, really good defensive wings as well that could potentially bother Shai. But I am going to take Shai's superstar factor, whereas I don't believe anyone else on the Pelicans has a superstar factor other than the player who's not playing for them. So I'm going to go with OKC here. So for the next round in the Eastern Conference, we're going to talk about Bulls versus Hawks. Again, I'm going to have to go with the team that I think has been significantly better ever since the All-Star break. Of course, the Atlanta Hawks have been better as well. But between the two teams, the Bulls offense is worse than the Hawks offense, obviously. But the defense, I do think, mitigates that. And I think the defense will ultimately prevail in that series. So that means that the Atlanta Hawks and the Toronto Raptors will be the two teams that I don't see making the play-in tournament. Just to acknowledge this here, if you think I just have some bias for the Bulls, first of all, I do. But frankly, again, I could really see Atlanta winning this game. I could really see Toronto winning that game. I just favor the Bulls slightly over both of them. Moving on to the second round of the play-in in the Western Conference, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves versus the OKC Thunder. Now, as previously mentioned, the Thunder are missing some key players. This time, Jaden McDaniels and Naz Reid are guaranteed not to play. Maybe there's a chance the previously questionable guys won't make it. Rudy Gobert will be able to play because he's no longer suspended from punching his teammate in the face. Not in the face, it was in the shoulder, but whatever. It's more dramatic to say it that way, so I'll say it that way. What I will give Minnesota in this series is I do think that ultimately they are a little bit better of a matchup versus OKC than the New Orleans Pelicans were. Even though, of course, there is no J-Mac and there is no Naz Reid, very key contributors to this team, we're still talking about Cat, Ant, and Rudy Gobert all on the same team, and that is significant. Now, Cat versus OKC has been bad this year, but of course those are partially injury-related stuff, and I'm not too worried about that, but it is worthy of note. If we take a look at how Shai plays versus them, he has no issue. 65% true shooting, 33 points per game, and them not having J-Mac to put against him, I do think that Shai should be fine. I could go either way here, but I am ultimately going to go with OKC. So that means in the Western Conference, the 7th seed will be the Los Angeles Lakers, and the 8th seed will be the OKC Thunder. And in the Eastern Conference, the 7th seed will be the Miami Heat, and the 8th seed will be the Chicago Bulls. That is my prediction for the play-in. Of course, we're going to see that play out tonight. So we'll look forward to that, but that's my prediction. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye.